Welcome to the Route to Success, where leaders share real stories that create hope and build resilience. Today, we are joined with Ben Campbell, a young CEO. And I should have asked first if you were okay with me saying young, because I know sometimes I didn't appreciate that when I was young.
That's
Leading
all
an
right.
organization of 20 hotels across 8 states with about 850 team members, which when Ben said that to me, I was totally humble. So I'm excited to talk about this. We'll explore what people first hospitality looks like at scale, how kindness becomes a system, and the practices that help teams bounce back stronger. Welcome, Ben. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Sarah. And I'll take being called young any day because I'm sure one day I'll be wishing I was called young again. So I appreciate it.
Sure, sure. I just want to jump in really quickly with a little side note that the hospitality industry is so much more important than people give credit to. I was recently traveling with my daughter and two dogs, and we had just a little medical mishap on the road and had to lean on some hospitality people to help us out. And we had the best service and the kindest people ever. And you wouldn't think that that is where you need to look for help, but sometimes it is. And I just want to say it was absolutely stellar. Unfortunately, the medical issue was with me, so I don't remember the hotel. So I apologize. All I can remember is kindness, which I think is probably a good thing to walk away with.
Yeah,
So let me
yeah,
just start off with how important hospitality truly is to communities, economic development, and to the people that they serve. And this is so much more than just a vacation. Okay, Ben, now that I've said my 2 cents, give us a quick snapshot of your path to CEO. What prepared you most and what didn't? What kind of surprised you?
yeah, sure. My path is probably a little different than most. I graduated college in 2009. Not a great time to be looking for a job. I was a collegiate athlete for 4 years, and baseball was my entire life up until 21. And then I got started in the workforce, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had a passion for people. And so I first started in food and beverage and then translated to a convention center and then ultimately to hospitality, where I started at hotels actually as a night auditor. I was going back for my MBA, living in California, and I was doing night school. And then I was also working overnight. And I quickly I needed a job and was kind of going through that path. And I realized like this is it for me. It brought in my passion for people, and then brought out a very strategic side in me and how we sell our rooms, what that looks like to sell reservations, and then ultimately deliver to the guest. So I went all in, and my path was from front desk to reservations agent to revenue manager to a director of sales to a general manager, and then eventually above property. And so I've been with our company now, Hospitality America, based in Greenville, South Carolina, since 2015, January of 2015. And it's been a great experience. We're a small company. We're a family operated company, which is a great fit for myself and a lot of our employees. We get to wear a lot of different hats. And so in the 11 years I've been with our company, I've worn a lot of different hats. And ultimately today I'm the CEO, and it's a privilege of a lifetime to do it.
So I love that you basically, as I had a very similar path to myself, and I always say I started at the bottom and worked my way up. You quite
Mhm.
literally started at the front desk and worked your way up. How do you think that influences your vision and perspective today versus people who just kind of walk into mid management and work their way up?
Yeah, it's a great question. One, I try to use it as empathy with our teams.
Mhm.
When I sit in front of them, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, where how hospitality is changing, how the markets are changing, and we have to adapt with it. And every time I ask our teams to do something different, or if we're coming out with a new initiative, I always tell them, I know how this is going to impact you because I have done your jobs. I've literally done every job in a hotel. And so what that does for me is I'm a person who always says, why are we doing it this way? I
Mhm.
hate when people say, well, just because we've always done it that way, right?
Right.
Sure, there's always foundational things to our processes that will remain the same, but we always need to be innovative. And if we're not being innovative in certain areas, then we're going to get left behind. And I use that empathy with our teams, which I'm very happy to have, because I think we all struggle with how our decisions. I mean, as a CEO, I always struggle with how my decisions every day are going to impact our teams, impact our guests, and impact our owners. And so without having that real empathy or experience, I think it wouldn't be as heartfelt, or our teams wouldn't buy into it as much.
I agree 100%. I love your perspective, and I think it does add value so much as a leader when you can say, "I've done it all." All right,
Mhm.
so here's the part that boggles my brain. I've never led a team over about 80. You lead a team of 850 people across 8 states. What are one or two rituals that keep culture consistent and resilient across properties? Because I think especially now lately in the news, I've been seeing how culture is more and more and more important at work.
Mhm. Yeah, like I said, I've been with our company 11 years. Our two principals, our founder was Chris Cargan, and lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And he built a great culture because it was him. He was so involved when he founded the company and you had 20 employees to at hotels to now you have 850. It was him and how he took care of our employees, and he kind of just built it organically. So when I took over in 2022, I said, the missing piece for us is we've never defined that culture.
Mhm.
And so what scared me the most, as being now responsible for, at that time it was about 600 employees, was, what's the right fit for Hospitality America as we look to grow and scale. And so we identified our core values. What was important to us? What did we embody today? And what do we want to ensure that we embody in the future? And we identified that as an acronym being PEACH today, which is, we
Okay.
are passionate with a spirit to serve. We are committed to excellence that inspires results. We adjust, adapt, and overcome. We are builders of communities inside of our hotels and outside of our hotels. And we are humble, trustworthy, and transparent. So all of that is what we look at when we assess anyone who wants to come into our organization. Do they embody those core values? And what that helps with is the scalability, right? Like, they know what they can expect from us as an organization, and we know what we're going to expect from them in their job. I knew that was going to be important in 2022, but I was blown away at how much our employees really put their arms around that and grabbed hold of it. And then from there, it's just a continual process of ensuring that it's a part of our language. These aren't just
Mhm.
posters we put up on the wall. These are things that we talk about literally every single day. And it's a part of our general managers and directors of sales, our property leaders. It's the expectation of them of bleeding out that language and hiring for Peach. So that's one ritual that we do. And then, I'd say the next one that we do is listen. As
Yes.
as simple as it may be, I challenge all of our leaders at being intentional, listening intentionally across our organization, with our employees, with our leaders at the property, and then for me. And so when I go around, I don't want to do a lot of talking. I want to do a lot of
Mhm.
listening. Sometimes I'm good at that. Sometimes I'm not, and because I am a talker, and I'm a leader, so I want to kind of influence, but I want to listen intently.
And, okay, first of all, you've said so much in just that one answer that I just want to highlight. When you really focus on creating that culture and giving it a name and creating that acronym PEACH, and that you very clearly articulated that that is involved in every aspect of every decision. It's more than just posters on the walls. Everybody knows it. And you literally just said it like this. I was like, wow, he's not even reading that. That is what is core to every organization, be it nonprofit or for profit. And that is what I spend my days. Your employees have to believe in it, because I think you will agree with me when I say this. employees follow a great vision, they don't follow a leader, right?
100%.
And that's what you've created. The second is the fact that you highlighted the need, you call it listening intentionally, I call it active listening. Same thing, but that
Right.
need to be present and listening and observing and learning. And I
Yep.
think that we take that for granted so much, especially in today's society. And I love that because just those two things, if every organization listening to that just focused in on those two things that you do and added them to their business, I think you would see exponential changes for the positive.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the important thing is not just, I mean, we say that, right? We say we're active listeners or we're listening intently, but we got to be able to take what we hear, that feedback, and then put it into action, right? If not, then our
Right.
employees are going to say, well, what was good for me? You know, why would I be honest or transparent with the organization if they're not going to do anything with it? Right. And so we
Right.
do an employee engagement survey every year. And so we incentivize our property leaders to get the response rate up. So we tell them, you know, our minimum responses should be 80% of our employees. So we just did that process like 2 weeks ago, and we did a 90% response rate. So out of the
Wow.
850 employees, 90% of them responded. I think we got something like 1,600 comments from our employees. Now, I'm sure all of that is not overwhelmingly positive. I'm sure a lot of it is, but how else can we be a good or improve as an organization if we're not listening and then trying to do something with the feedback?
And I would say what you are alluding to, not saying, is valuing the perspective and input of every single employee, because
Yeah,
you understand that a challenge is going to be seen different at each level. And sometimes the front desk will have the solution because it's their challenge.
exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So this will be interesting. I'm excited to hear this one. Share a moment when a hotel team went above and beyond for a guest, and how did you turn that single act into a repeatable practice?
Yeah, the repeatable practice, I'll come back. Well, I'll kind of start there, to be honest. It really, because it's from our conversation around Peach, like that's who we look for
Mhm.
in individuals, right? People that are passionate about hospitality. I say that to our teams all the time. I can't teach you to be passionate about serving others. If you don't have that passion, then this isn't the business for you. That's fine. But a specific example, you know, of course, we have plenty of examples of maybe like what you started off the call with. You know, you're having an emergency, and you know, we have situations like that all the time. We have thousands and thousands of guests in our hotels that we have to show empathy for. But the ones that really come to mind are times of like real despair where, you know, we've had deaths in our hotels, and we've had guests that have had experienced death of other family members when they've been there. And so this one instance, a guest was staying with us. They were an extended stay guest because we have some
Mhm.
extended stay hotels, and they experienced a death in the family. And what our team did for that individual, because they couldn't be there in that moment when that happened, what they did for them is put their arms around them, said, whatever we can do, hey, just go ahead and leave. We took care of all of their things in the room. And then actually a few of them, like we ended up sending flowers to the funeral and did everything. I mean, and then when that guest returned, they really felt like they were returning back to a second home, was the feedback that we got from them. And not that they were excited to leave and come, like what was happening and coming back, but it was a sense of comfort that they knew what they were coming back to,
Yes.
with our employees. And so that situation really kind of stuck with me as, you know, we're all human, and
Mhm.
we all go through certain things. I mean, our employees come to work with, you know, things in their personal lives, and guests come to our hotels with things in their personal lives. At the end of the day, we're all human, and we all want to have the same feeling and experience. And so those are the type of individuals that we look for, and that's what we say is in what we embody in
Mhm.
Peach.
I love that. You know, it's so funny. I've never thought of death at hotels. It's You said that and I was a little shocked for a minute, but you're so right. Unfortunately, that would be something you would have to deal with. And it sounds
Mhm.
like your team more than stepped up, because I've been in that situation and you can't even think. So to know that they took such care of that guest and the guest didn't have to think, that is a sense of comfort that I can't, anyhow. All right.
Yep.
I'm not going to babble anymore. So when growth and people's priorities collide, and I'm sure as a leader you're the same as me, we want to, unfortunately and fortunately, we want to see our people outgrow us, right? We want to see them grow and do better and become better. How do you decide walk us through a recent trade-off and the principle you used, and how do you encourage that continued growth?
Like individual growth, like professional growth of our
Mhm.
of employees. Yeah, and honestly, I take that as a motivation factor for me and to grow the company. Of course, I want to grow the company because we need to be a growing, viable company. We need to do it in the right way, and it needs to be scalable. But I also want to grow our company for our team members. I say that every year at our annual conference for our property leaders. I put up on the screen all the great things we have going across the company and the growth that we have, because I want them to be excited about the vision that you said, right? And what's happening. And of course, people decide to leave the company for maybe greener pastures. Of course, we wish them all the best. But I would say, and most recently, we've had some individuals leave and then come back. And
Mm.
just because not every organization is set up with a solid foundation like Hospitality America has, and the empathy and the vision that we have for our associates. Not all of them, of course, return, but way that we see it is people have poured into me for my career,
Mm.
and I've benefited from that. I want others to benefit and see a real passion for our industry. It's a great industry that you can become a general manager without a 4-year degree, right? A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't see, or think of hospitality or hotels as a great career. I believe it is, and so we want to pour into the next generation of hotelier for the industry, but for Hospitality America too.
I love that. That speaks so highly of you that people want to come back. I think that's the best endorsement you can get.
Mhm.
Okay, in practical terms, and I'm interested in this because I do also work as a coach and a mentor, so I'm interested in your tips here. In practical terms, how do you coach for kindness without burning out teams? How do you know it's working? And are there any tips that you can share?
Hmm. So say that one more time, so I understand the purpose of the question. Yeah.
Yes. So we're talking about coaching for kindness. So when you coach your team, like to be kind and to be empathetic and to
Hmm.
embody peach, let's say when you're coaching to embody
Right.
peach,
Yep.
how do you do that? How do you tell it's working amongst your team? And do you have any tips that you can share? And how do you prevent burnout? So there's a lot of questions just all right in that one
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, we definitely tested ourselves for burnout going through COVID. COVID
Oh,
was
I can
what
imagine.
tested our entire industry for that. So I'll come back to that one. Coaching for kindness. I mean, it really starts with Peach. I mean, I
Mhm.
think the thing that Peach kind of turned into when we rolled it out to our employees was kindness. Well, you're not being kind, or we were kind of having conversations with associates, and it was like, well, you're not being Peach. We had to quickly remind it is that kindness is one aspect of Peach, right? It's in the passion and being humble, transparent, and trustworthy. That's really where we start. If you're saying like coaching from kindness, it's more of the listening piece. It's being really leaning into being humble, trustworthy, and transparent. That's how I want to be as a leader, and I feel that flows down to the rest of the team. That's certainly my expectation. And then when I go around to the properties, that's what I'm assessing. Now, from a leadership standpoint, what we expect from our general managers who are, boots on the ground, what we have huddles every single day at our properties, and those huddles can be something that we're working on at that hotel, like a weakness maybe. But some of it could be, I was at a recent huddle where they had the game of telephone, and they were starting, and it was something as simple as you do as a child, but the importance was, are we having closed loop communication within the hotel, right? Just saying guest in 121 needs new towels, well, are we following up to make sure that that actually happened? Right. That's our biggest
Right.
area of opportunity sometimes at the hotels is we serve the employee or we receive that communication, but we're not following up with it. So there's little ways that we do that inside the hotel. Huddles is one of them. And then on the burnout side, the
Mhm.
burnout is really ensuring that the all the way down to our line level associates that they understand the purpose of what we're trying to achieve every day. The easiest way to get burnout into an organization or at a hotel is when people are working really, really hard and they don't know why and they don't know the purpose,
Yes.
right? We all
Yes.
want to have a purpose and we all want to work harder and harder if we understand what we're trying to deliver. And so any day that you boil down checking in, checking out as just a mundane thing, that's when burnout, no matter how much a person is making, if it's an hourly wage or if it's a salary wage, everybody starts to feel that burnout kind of creep in.
I love how you said that. And it's about knowing that vision, knowing that why we do what we do. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because everything that I've read about leadership, it's what you're instilling into this group. And please don't think by any means I'm trying to like stroke your ego, because anybody that knows me will tell you that's the last thing I do. It's just not in my personality. But I love that we're getting living examples of how to prevent burnout, how to show and lead by vision, lead by why, have your staff understand why they're doing what they do and how that prevents burnout. I think that's really important.
And
I
look,
think this,
we're
yes,
not perfect. We're
no,
not perfect. And that's,
yeah,
and that's the or the purpose of why we get that the employee surveys every
right.
year, because one hotel may be killing it on getting that buy-in from their associates and the associates don't feel that burnout. But then we've got, like you said, 20 hotels. So we're bound to have
Right.
one hotel that's creeping in. Once we
Mhm.
see that, then we start to see a negative financial position of the hotel because we're not delivering on a guest service. And so that's why it's so important and why we have to constantly be working at it.
Yeah. And I always tell people, think of things like a muscle, right? The more you work it, the easier it gets to do. That's my vision. Okay. This next one, I think we'll probably end up and talk a little bit about COVID, because I have a feeling this is where you're going to have the best example. Tell us about a setback that hit operations. What was your recovery playbook and what changed the next day to prevent that repeat? And if we do talk about COVID, we can't say change the next day. It was maybe change the next year, right?
Yeah, I'll start high level and then work down because COVID, obviously. I mean, April of 2020, we ran as a portfolio, I think a combined 7% occupancy across our 15 hotels at the time. And so, that's some scary times when your revenues are, hundreds of dollars and not what they need to be. And so that taught us a lot. We never thought we'd experience something like that. But, how we pivoted from that, early on was, okay, we need to look at the foundational level of what our business is. Transient business. So, more people just moving around the country and wanting to get out on the road and experience things.
Mhm.
That demand came back really, really fast. Then our corporate travelers started coming back, and then more groups started to come back. So we looked at it was, okay, how do we strategically assess and rebuild this demand as it's coming in, and how do we forecast and look forward so that the hotels can pivot in our marketing strategies and our sales strategies, all of that. So what we've done is we have a weekly, monthly, quarterly process in which we are assessing that demand and quickly making some pivots. So one big thing that came out of it is our quarterly calls, which we call continuously strategizing or strategy planning. CSP is what we call. And so it's a real assessment of, okay, what happened this past quarter and what do we think is going to happen next quarter? What worked and how do we need to pivot? And so every hotel goes through that process, and then action plannings come out of that. So that was one of the things that we really kind of learned because things were happening so fast. We need to be assessing the weekly, then the monthly, and then that rolls up into the quarterly, where we can make big strategy changes. A recent example of that would have been one of our hotels had good IRS business last year as they were trying to staff up for tax season. Unfortunately, what happened, maybe at the beginning of the year when a lot of cuts were happening to federal government, IRS was a part of that. And we lost a lot of group that had contracted with this hotel for the next 90 days. So as soon as we found out that was happening, we actually had a quick strategy planning meeting of like, okay, what else is in the market? We had this as an expectation. Now, how are we going to pivot from a sales perspective? Who are we going to target differently and all that? And so we ended up going after some different negotiated pieces of business instead of government. And it worked out to, a little bit. I wouldn't say we would be able to replace all of that business, but it was better than sitting there saying, oh, wow, okay, we couldn't do anything. Now let's just go see what we can do. Like there's a lot of different levers a hotel could pull to generate more revenue. Some of them work out, some of them don't, but it's a constant strategizing and then acting on that strategy.
And I think so what it sounds like to me, what I'm getting from you is it's very active. So you create that strategy, like here's your long-term goal, then you work backwards and almost literally create a to-do list for every single person. So they know what's expected every day and they know I'm working towards this pivot. And I love how you assess so regularly to do that pivoting. People don't understand the value of that pivot and value of looking even just a week and say, this is how this week went. What can we do differently for next week? And sounds like you guys have really embodied that. All right, Ben, you've been amazing. I have one last question for you. And I almost think that the first part of this might be the most important thing I want to stress because I'm interested. I want to learn from you because I don't know. And the second, I know I will learn from you. So for listeners, the first part is, what is one way travelers can support hotel staff? How can we be better guests? And then the second part is, what is one habit leaders can adopt to build hope in their teams?
Yeah. So the first one is, it kind of goes back to the empathy that we were talking about early on, right? And understanding that our associates sometimes have things happen in their personal lives that it's really hard to leave at home and not bring that to work. Now, we coach our employees as best we can. We tell our front desk associates, you're on stage. You are like on a play. We have to leave all that stuff behind. But even though the front desk agent may seem like they don't have something that's happening in their personal lives, doesn't mean that an interaction with a guest can't hurt them emotionally and because they're bringing that. So I think that would be one, is just understanding that we're all human and we're all here to do the job that and to pay for or to deliver on the service that the guest is paying for. But also having that empathy that we're all human and that they are working there, but they are there to deliver the service and they do want to, because that's why they have the job. Sometimes we're just not perfect. And we strive to be, but sometimes we're not. And then the second question, remind me.
What's one habit leaders can adopt to build hope in their teams?
I think it's the active listening piece. I use your language, active listening, intentional listening. If we're not getting that feedback and then trying to understand different perspectives, then that is holding us back. I go back and talk to I went to Gardner Webb University and I played baseball there. And so I go back and talk to the team every year. And one of the things I tell them is that during that season, you will have a period of adversity, either individually or as a team. And what my challenge to them is, when we have periods of adversity, it's easy for us to tunnel vision into that adversity, as opposed to try to change our perspective around what's happening or change our perspective and be bigger than the situation. So I had a lot of adversity as a pitcher at Gardner Webb. So this is where I learned a lot of it is, I would get so tunnel visioned on my most recent outing, right? Or something like that. But if I actually thought maybe more about the team success, then I could change my perspective and have a different outlook. Same thing that for our leaderships. Right now, hospitality, our business is rocky. And so I remind our general managers all the time, let's find areas that we can be successful in and let's go be successful there. Just because we have some, maybe staffing issues, we can't hire as quickly as we want to, things of that nature. Let's focus on what we can control and let's change our perspective around it to continually have a positive outlook and drive positive change.
So Ben, first of all, I did work most of my career with kids. So after what you just said, I would totally high five you. Just giving you the perspective of I've always worked with kids. That's why I would high five you, because what you said is so valuable. What I would like to stress is, first of all, thank you for taking the time to visit with me. Thank you for teaching us so much about the hospitality business, because there's a lot to learn. What I want to stress is that what you shared, the tips that you are giving, and the way you are leading your organization, in my perspective, my humble perspective, are not hospitality specific. They are specific to leaders who want to intentionally bring out the best within their organization and leadership. And so the
Yeah.
tips that you shared, I think can be applied across the board, for profit or nonprofit. I think you really instilled a lot of value and a lot of wisdom, and you shared so much today. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you so much for ending on one of my favorite topics with, when you're in adversity, change your perspective. That's why I go on so many dog walks, because it's like, okay, what can I learn? How can I do this differently? And for me, it's that movement and being outside changes everything.
Yep, 100%. Yep. We
Yes.
all struggle with, and I think this is an important point, is we all struggle with some version of imposter syndrome. So
Yes.
even, and I'm guilty of it just as much as anyone. And, I think that's the important piece too, is, changing your perspective helps in that
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, because you can see that other people are struggling with a decision just as much as I'm struggling, or what I'm going through with Hospitality America and trying to lead us to growth. A
Right.
lot of times there's hurdles to that, and we're not perfect, and there's challenges every single day, and not getting caught in those challenges, but changing our perspective to
Mhm.
try to continue to drive positive change.
And you are just such a breath of fresh air. Thank you, by the way, because I needed this today. So I hope everybody else needed this incredible conversation. And I hope that your staff knows how lucky they are to work with somebody like you, because I have not worked for a traditional company in 7.5 years. I've run my own company for that long. But I can tell you, with what you have painted today, I would gladly put my name in to work for you, because I think it would be that amazing of a situation. So thank you so much, Ben, for your time
No,
today.
thank you. I appreciate it, Sarah.
And if I can ever do anything, please don't ever hesitate to reach out, because I'm always here to help. That's what I always tell people. 20 years down the road, if there's something I can do, I'm here.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.